People who were missing as a child. What happened? I went missing when I was 7 years old for 3 days that felt like forever. But the truth about what happened didn't come out until I was 25 and my dad was dying in the hospital. It was a Saturday in October. My parents were fighting again, screaming at each other in the kitchen while I played with my toy cars in the living room. Dad had been drinking, which always made everything worse. The fight got really bad. Mom was crying and dad was yelling about money and bills we couldn't pay. I heard something crash, probably a plate or glass hitting the wall. That's when dad grabbed me and said we were going for a drive. Mom was screaming, "Don't you dare take him!" But dad was already carrying me out to his truck. I was scared but also kind of excited. Dad never took me anywhere alone. We drove for hours. I fell asleep in the passenger seat with my seatbelt barely fitting around my little body. When I woke up, we were at this cabin in the woods that belonged to my Uncle Marcus. Dad told me we were going camping, just the two of us. He said Mom needed some time to cool down and think about things. We'd go home in a couple days when everything was better. For 3 days, we lived at that cabin. Dad taught me how to fish in the lake and make s'mores over the fire pit. He didn't drink at all, which was weird because he usually had a beer every night. We talked about everything. He told me stories about when he was a kid and asked about school and my friends. It was the best time I'd ever had with my dad. He seemed happy and relaxed in a way I'd never seen before. On the third day, police cars showed up. Lots of them. They surrounded the cabin and used a bullhorn to tell Dad to come out with his hands up. I was terrified and started crying. Dad hugged me tight and said, "I'm sorry, buddy. I thought I was doing the right thing." Then he carried me outside and handed me to a police officer while they put handcuffs on him. Mom was there too, sobbing and grabbing me like she thought I might disappear again. Everyone kept asking if I was okay, if Dad had hurt me, if I needed to go to the hospital. I kept saying I was fine. We went camping. Dad taught me how to fish. Why was everyone so upset? The police said Dad had kidnapped me, that Mom had been going crazy looking everywhere. They had search parties and helicopters and everything. The whole town was looking for us. Dad got arrested and had to stay in jail for 6 months. When he came home, things were different. Mom watched him like a hawk. I wasn't allowed to be alone with him anymore. For 18 years, everyone treated it like Dad had done this terrible thing. Mom would get upset if anyone mentioned it. Dad never talked about those 3 days at all. Then last month, Dad was in the hospital dying from liver cancer. The pain medication made him talk more than usual. That's when he told me the real story. The night we left, Mom had thrown a coffee mug at his head. It shattered against the wall right next to where I was sitting. A piece of glass cut my cheek, just a tiny scratch. Dad said that's when he snapped. He realized I wasn't safe in that house with them fighting all the time. So he took me to the only place he could think of where we could both be peaceful. "I wasn't trying to steal you away from your mom," he said with tears in his eyes. "I was trying to save you from us, from all the screaming and throwing things and chaos." He said those 3 days at the cabin were the only time he ever felt like a real father. No alcohol, no fighting, just him and me being happy together. "I knew they'd find us eventually," he whispered. "I just wanted to give you 3 days of what childhood should feel like. I wanted you to remember that your dad could be good sometimes." Dad died 2 weeks later. At the funeral, Uncle Marcus pulled me aside and said something that broke my heart. "Your dad called me that night before he took you. He was crying and said he didn't know how to protect you from all the fighting. He just wanted to give you some peace." I still have that tiny scar on my cheek from the glass that night. For 25 years, I thought it was from falling off my bike. Turns out it was the reason my dad risked everything to take me camping. The 3 days I went missing weren't a kidnapping. They were my dad's way of saying goodbye to the only good part of his life before the alcohol and anger destroyed everything else. I never got to tell him that those 3 days at the cabin are still my happiest childhood memory.